Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, commonly known as Elagabalus or Heliogabalus, was a Roman emperor who reigned from 218 to 222. He was born around 203 AD to Sextus Varius Marcellus and Julia Soaemias Bassiana. His father was initially a member of the knightly class, but was later promoted to senator. Elagabalus' grandmother, Julia Maesa, was the widow of the consul Julius Avitus, sister of Julia Domna, and sister-in-law of Emperor Septimius Severus. Elagabalus' mother, Julia Soaemias, was the niece of Emperor Caracalla, and his other relatives included his aunt Julia Avita Mamaea, uncle Marcus Julius Gessius Marcianus, and their son Alexander Severus. Elagabalus' family held hereditary rights to the priesthood of the sun god El-Jebel, of which deity Elagabalus was the high priest near Emesa in Syria. Initially, the deity El-Jebel was only worshipped in Emesa. The name is derived from the Syriac, Il-Hag-Gabal, which means God in the mountain. This is a combination of Il, which means God, and Gabal, which means mountain, in Hebrew and Arabic. El-Jebel was the Emesian manifestation of the deity. The worship of the deity known as Elagabalus spread beyond Emesa and throughout the Roman Empire in the 2nd century. Eventually, the god was incorporated into the Roman pantheon and identified with the Roman sun god Sol Indiges, and later with Sol Invictus, who was worshipped during the 2nd and 3rd centuries. In Greek mythology, the sun god is called Helios, and the name Heliogabalus is a variant of the name Elagabalus. When Emperor Macrinus rose to power, he banished Julia Maesa, her 2 daughters, and her grandson Elagabalus to their estate near Emesa in Syria, as they were seen as a threat to his rule. However, upon arriving in Syria, Julia Maesa and Elagabalus' tutor Gannus began plotting to overthrow Macrinus' regime and elevate Elagabalus to the imperial throne. They declared Elagabalus to be the illegitimate son of the previous emperor, Caracalla, and persuaded the 3rd Legion in Raphanna to swear allegiance to him. On May 16, 218 AD, Publius Valerius Commazon Euticianus, commander of the 3rd Legion, proclaimed Elagabalus emperor. To further legitimize his claim to the throne, Elagabalus adopted Caracalla's names, Marcus Aurelius Antoninus. In response to the events in the region, Macrinus dispatched his praetorian prefect, Ulpius Julianus, along with a force of troops to quell the rebellion of the 3rd Legion. However, during the battle, the troops turned against their own commanders and joined Elagabalus' forces. Ulpius Julianus was killed, and his severed head was returned to the emperor. Macrinus then sent letters to the Senate denouncing Elagabalus as the false Antoninus and claiming that he was insane. The Senate, along with both consuls and other senior members of the Roman leadership, condemned Elagabalus, and war was declared on him and Julia Maesa. The desertion of the 2nd Legion to Elagabalus' side further weakened the reign of Macrinus and his son, due to bribes and promises made by Julia Maesa. Macrinus' forces were defeated on June 8, 218 AD, at the Battle of Anche, by troops commanded by Gannus. Macrinus fled in disguise as a courier towards Italy, but he was intercepted near Chalcedon and executed in Cappadocia. His son, Diogumenianus, who had been sent to court in Parthia for his safety, was captured in Zeugma and also put to death. Elagabalus proclaimed the date of the victory at Anche as the beginning of his reign and assumed the imperial title without the prior consent of the Senate, contrary to tradition. This would become a common practice among 3rd century emperors. He sent conciliatory letters to Rome, offering amnesty to the Senate and recognizing the laws. The government of Macrinus and his son was condemned. The senators acknowledged Elagabalus as emperor and accepted his claim of being Caracalla's son without any instance of plagiarism. Furthermore, Caracalla and Julia Domna were both deified by the Senate, while Julia Maesa and Julia Soaemias were elevated to the rank of Augusta. The memory of Macrinus and Diogumenianus was condemned by the Senate through damnatio memoriae. Commazon, the former commander of the 3rd Legion, was appointed as the commander of the Praetorian Guard. During the winter of 218 AD in Nicomedia, Elagabalus's religious beliefs emerged as a problem. Historian Cassius Dio wrote that the emperor had Gannus killed because he forced Elagabalus to live moderately and prudently. To acclimatize the Romans to the concept of having an Oriental priest as emperor, Julia Caesar sent a painting of Elagabalus in priestly robes to Rome. This painting was hung above a statue of the goddess Victoria in the Curia Julia, causing the senators to offer sacrifices to both Victoria and Elagabalus. The legions were appalled by the emperor's behavior and regretted their decision to support his accession to the throne. While Elagabalus was en route to Rome, brief revolts occurred, instigated by Gellius Maximus in the 4th Legion and by the 3rd Legion, which had initially raised Elagabalus to the throne under the command of Senator Severus. However, the revolts were quickly quelled, and the 3rd Legion was disbanded. After arriving in Rome in the autumn of 219 AD, Commazon and other supporters of Julia Caesar and Elagabalus were granted prestigious and profitable positions, which angered numerous senators who believed that individuals of low birth did not deserve such privileges. Commazon served as Praetorian prefect and went on to hold the positions of city prefect of Rome 3 times and consul twice. During Elagabalus' reign, the value of Roman currency was diminished as he decreased the silver purity of the denarius from 58% to 46.5%, resulting in a decrease in actual silver weight from 1.82 grams to 1.41 grams. Additionally, he discontinued the Antoninianus coin during his time in Rome. Elagabalus tried to promote his alleged lover, the charioteer Hierocles, to the position of Caesar, and he appointed another purported lover, the athlete Aurelius Soticus, to the role of Cubicularius, chamber master, which held significant influence but was non-administrative. Although Elagabalus extended amnesty to the upper class in Rome, the offer was mostly declined, and the jurist Ulpianus was exiled. The relationship between Julia Caesar, Julius Oemias, and Elagabalus was initially strong. Both women were granted senatorial titles, with Oemias receiving the traditional title of Clarissima and Caesar being awarded the unconventional title of Mater Castrorum et Senatus, meaning Mother of the Camp and of the Senate. However, Julia Caesar's attempts to position herself as the true power behind the throne were met with resistance from Elagabalus, who proved to be fiercely independent and difficult to control. During the reign of Septimius Severus, the worship of the sun had gained prominence throughout the empire. Elagabalus seized this opportunity to elevate Elagabal as the primary deity in the Roman pantheon. The god was renamed Deus Sol Invictus, or God the Undefeated Sun, and was even placed above Jupiter in the pantheon. In an effort to show respect for the Roman religion, Elagabalus united Astarte, Minerva, Urania, or a combination of the three with Elagabalus as his consort. Before constructing a temple dedicated specifically to Elagabalus, the emperor placed the deity's meteorite next to Jupiter's throne in the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus. Elagabalus caused a great deal of scandal by marrying the Vestal Virgin Aquilia Severa, disregarding Roman law and tradition which stipulated that any Vestal Virgin who engaged in sexual activity should be buried alive. He believed that this union would result in godlike children. Additionally, he oversaw the construction of an extravagant temple on the Palatine Hill, known as the Elagabalium, which housed a black conical meteorite from Emesa that was worshipped as if it had been sent from heaven. This stone was adorned with markings that were believed to form a rough image of the sun. To become the high priest of his new religion, Elagabalus underwent circumcision of his foreskin, and he performed dances around the altar of Deus Sol Invictus accompanied by drums and cymbals. He also held an annual festival in honor of the sun god, which was well attended by the masses due in part to the distribution of free food. During the festival, Elagabalus would drive the stone of Emesa through the city on a chariot decorated with gold and jewels. The deity was carried in a chariot drawn by 6 magnificent spotless white horses adorned with gold buckles and rich ornaments. No one held the reins or drove the chariot as it appeared to be guided by the god himself. Elagabalus stood at the front of the chariot, facing the deity, while holding the reins of the horses in his hands. He walked backwards while covering the entire course, keeping his gaze on the face of the god. To ensure the exclusive worship of Elagabalus, the most sacred artifacts of the Roman religion, including the Great Mother, the Fire of Vesta, the shields of the Salii, and the Palladium, were transferred to the Elagabalium. there is much speculation surrounding Elagabalus' sexual orientation and gender identity. During his reign as emperor, which lasted 4 years between the ages of 14 and 18, Elagabalus married and divorced 5 times, with only 3 of his wives known by name. His first wife was Julia Cornelia Paula, followed by the Vestal Virgin Julia Aquilia Severa, whom he quickly left to marry Annia Aurelia Faustina, the widow of a man recently executed by Elagabalus. However, he returned to Aquilia Severa by the end of the year. According to Cassius Dio, Elagabalus' most stable relationship was with his chariot driver, a Carian blonde slave named Hierocles, whom he referred to as his husband. The Historia Augusta asserts that Elagabalus wedded Zoticus, an athlete from Smyrna, in a public ceremony in Rome, while Cassius Dio claimed that Elagabalus engaged in acts of prostitution and indecency, often standing naked at the entrance of a specially designated room in the imperial palace, attempting to seduce passers-by with a soft voice. He hired individuals to participate in such acts and charged money for them, quarreling with his partners in the profession and boasting about his earnings and the number of his lovers. Herodianus described Elagabalus as someone who took pleasure in using cosmetics to enhance his appearance, and he relished being referred to as mistress, wife, or queen of Hierocles. According to some contemporary authors, Elagabalus is sometimes characterized as transgender or transsexual, particularly based on the allegation that he offered substantial sums of money to physicians who could provide him with female genitalia. In 221 AD, Elagabalus' behavior, particularly his association with Hierocles, had become irritating to the Praetorian Guard. When Elagabalus' grandmother, Julia Maesa, realized that his support among the soldiers was dwindling, she decided that he and his mother, who had encouraged his controversial religious practices, should be replaced. Julia Avita Mamaea, her other daughter, and her son Severus Alexander were proposed as alternatives. Julia Maesa convinced Elagabalus to name his cousin Alexander as his successor, and Alexander was given the title Caesar. He shared the consulship with Elagabalus that year. However, Elagabalus went back on his word when he suspected that the Praetorian Guard favored his nephew over him. After numerous unsuccessful attempts to assassinate Alexander, Elagabalus took away Alexander's titles, revoked his consulship, and spread rumors that Alexander was dying to test the Praetorian Guard's reaction. This resulted in a riot, and the Praetorian Guard demanded that Elagabalus and Alexander come to the Praetorian camp. Elagabalus complied and arrived at the Praetorian camp on March 11, 222 AD with his cousin and both their mothers. Upon arrival, the soldiers cheered for Alexander and ignored Elagabalus. In response, Elagabalus ordered the arrest and execution of all who participated in the insubordination. The Praetorian Guard then attacked Elagabalus and his mother. Elagabalus tried to escape and would have succeeded by hiding in a box, but he was discovered and killed. He was 18 years old. His mother, who embraced him and clung to him, also died. Their heads were cut off, and their bodies were stripped naked and dragged through the city. Elagabalus' mother's body was left somewhere, while his body was thrown into the river. After the massacre, many of Elagabalus' associates were killed or deposed, including Hierocles and Comazon. His religious decrees were reversed, and the stone of El Jebel was returned to Emesa. Women were also banned from attending Senate meetings, and the practice of damnatio memoriae was employed to erase Elagabalus' public record. Thanks for watching this video. If you like the video, please subscribe to our channel.